Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sub-Saharan African migrants are targeted once again by Tunisians amidst a flare-up of racist tensions exacerbated by the killing of a local in Sfax by a reportedly Cameroonian migrant. In response, some black foreigners are rounded up and forcibly evicted from the city to be sent to the Libyan border. Also, not just a humanitarian crisis, but a crisis of humanity, as the UN condemns widespread sexual assault during Sudan's war, and the battling continues. I speak to the ICRC's Africa chief about efforts to mitigate the devastation caused by months of conflict. And all aboard Bamako's boat bus, children from riverside communities take to the waters to head out to a specially built island school to make sure that there's a place for everyone to learn. But first, in Tunisia, hundreds of sub-Saharan migrants have been shipped out to a desolate border area amidst mounting racist and xenophobic tensions in the country. Relations have taken a turn for the worse in the port city of Sfax this week after a Tunisian was killed during confrontations with dark-skinned foreigners. The surge in attacks on migrants was triggered by President Kais Saied saying in February that there was a migrant plot to replace Arab Tunisians. Our correspondent sent us this report.
Tuesday night in Tunisia, several migrants were evacuated under police protection from their homes in Sfax. They were heckled by locals as they left. Others were taken in buses to an unknown destination. These tense nights followed the death of Tunisian Nizar Amri following clashes with sub-Saharan migrants on Monday night. Tensions were at their highest at Amri's funeral on Tuesday afternoon.
I was in the street where the crime happened. I went to look for my bike. I was about 200 meters away, and look at my condition. Others were hit. What's going on in the country? Where are we going?
3 migrants have been arrested and Sfax prosecutors are investigating. Racist tensions have been escalating over the last few months. Tunisians stabbed a migrant from Benin at the end of May, and there have been several clashes in residential neighborhoods in the last 2 weeks. Locals are increasingly unhappy about the flow of foreigners passing through on their way to Italy. Authorities are trying to head off further violence.
We're trying to re-establish order. We're trying to prosecute all the people involved, whether they are Tunisians or Africans, because all people must comply with Tunisian law.
Wednesday in the city, we meet several migrants who fled the xenophobic attacks or who were chased from their housing because of mounting racist sentiment. Many have been forced onto the streets. 20-year-old Abu Bakr from Sierra Leone agreed to speak with us.
Well, the situation right now is not good because these some Arab guys went and attacked us. They raped the black girls, stole our money, they harm us, do all sorts of things to us. It's not good.
Amid the violence, some migrants have gone to Sfax's train station to try to escape to the capital, Tunis, and demand help from their embassies.
You go for car, you cannot have car. So we decide to run for us to come and to take the train for us to go to Tunis for our safety because our life is in danger.
Off camera, some say they fear deportation and being abandoned at the Libyan border if they are arrested, something that's happened to migrants in Tunisia before.
Now, the UN has called out rising sexual violence in Sudan's war. Over 2 months of fighting between warring generals has cost at least 3,000 lives and displaced millions. UN investigators have also received reports of systematic rape and assault. Meanwhile, rockets and heavy artillery continue to be used in the capital. The western region of Darfur has also been badly hit. Infrastructure has been completely decimated in parts of the country. In Khartoum, many young cancer sufferers aren't being treated because of the war, as most hospitals have been destroyed. According to UNICEF, at least 330 children have been killed since the start of the conflict in mid-April. A few, though, have been managed to be evacuated and be treated outside of the capital. Our team sent us this report.
These children in the medical center of Wad Madani are playing as they enjoy a rare moment of calm. They have cancer and fled Khartoum and the war. The capital's oncology hospital had to shut down.
As the war got worse, medicine was not available anymore. There were no more doctors. We were lucky to be transferred here to Madani, and thank God there are doctors here, and we are safe.
Like Abdulazim's son, between 1,500 and 2,000 children were being treated every month in the capital. About 350 of them arrived here to follow their treatment. Although the city is spared by the fighting, the hospital is facing major shortages.
After the children arrived at the hospital, they took some rest and we tried to resume their treatment. We gave them what was available. We don't have access to all the medicine. 80% of the products needed are not available. We're unable to treat most of them. The only things we can do is to tell them to be patient and wait.
Before the war, children from wealthy families were going to Egypt or Europe to seek treatment. Shortages were already common in Sudan. An NGO has managed to stockpile some medicine to treat some types of cancer, but the stock lasts for about 6 months only.
The problem is that when a treatment is given to a child, then it's gone. Patients can wait a long time before they can carry on with the treatment. It's a setback from all progress made beforehand. The children's health is getting worse.
The number of new cancer cases in Sudan has been growing over the past years. Thousands of children could die because of the lack of medicine due to the war.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by Patrick Youssef, the Africa Director for the International Committee of the Red Cross. Patrick, thanks so much for coming in to speak to me. Now, the ICRC actually has a team based in where that report was filmed, in Wad Madani. What can you tell me from your experience about where things stand now in terms of the available medical infrastructure in Sudan? We were talking about it just a month ago, about it being completely devastated. I imagine things are much worse now.
Well, obviously, 2 months, more than 2 months since the beginning of the crisis, since the outbreak, indeed, of armed conflicts and violence in the capital, there are more than 60 to 70% of all health facilities are completely out of service, which left us to try and create something else, something outside of the capital in Wad Madani, where we have our ICRC teams that have gone in and out to Khartoum, but indeed find safety in Wad Madani, where indeed in your report the transfers are happening. But unfortunately, that's not enough. Obviously, we need to reinforce the teams working in Wad Madani, namely the Sudanese doctors and nurses, to support them, to incentivize them to remain where they are and support them with medical items, with surgical materials, as well as with dressing kits. And that's what the ICRC teams, as well as the Sudanese Red Crescent teams, are actually doing today.
And what else can organisations like the ICRC do within the chaos of this conflict to try and mitigate some of the suffering that the Sudanese still stuck in the country are going through?
Well, we've been very active since really the beginning of the conflict. Since the beginning of the crisis, we've been acting as a neutral intermediary, for example, trying to be indeed the intermediary between the parties, to either reinforce the trust, but also act on behalf of those who were trapped, for example, like over 280 orphans who were stuck in Khartoum, where the ICRC teams have managed to evacuate them to Wad Madani as well. The same happened with the liberation of a lot of detainees. 125 were liberated, handed over to the ICRC, again acted as a neutral intermediary. A lot of material was distributed in the capital, but let's be honest, insecurity and so many other factors are hindering access and really limiting the access of humanitarian actors and shrinking the humanitarian space like you cannot imagine. That's only in Khartoum, while the situation in Darfur is obviously even worse.
You know, we talked a lot about these, I feel like every time we talk about one of the ceasefires, we call it a failed ceasefire. But from your point of view, was there any benefit to those lulls? Did you manage to achieve anything in terms of, you know, humanitarian aid, accessing people who need help in whatever way they might be able to?
We were really more successful when we negotiated directly our access and security on the ground with the local commanders. Obviously, the Jeddah platform created by Saudi Arabia and the United States have really made a lot of efforts to create spaces, corridors, but also a humanitarian truth to allow humanitarian actors to act. And we did do so, but it's, I would say, underwhelming when it comes to the overall the might and the volume of humanitarian needs, way more needs to be done with or without a ceasefire. Hence, I would really call not only on the parties, but those mediators and all those who can influence the parties to allow more humanitarian action in the country, especially in Khartoum and in Darfur, and more to be done in the name of those who are suffering. We're talking about thousands who were killed in a record time.
But what about outside of Sudan itself? Because you've also been doing what you can to help those who, the millions who, the hundreds of thousands who've left the country, many of whom themselves are injured. What kind of assistance is available to them?
The Red Cross and Red Crescent movement is extremely privileged to have work with local Red Cross and Red Crescent organizations. So, for example, since the influx of refugees started going to Abéché, to Adre, to the eastern part of Chad, the immediate reaction from the Chadian Red Cross was to support them. Today we have teams, ICRC teams in Ade, in Adre, and in Abéché. We've deployed even a surgical team to alleviate or to reinforce the capacity of the Chadian doctors, a full medical team, as well as a second medical team coming in with surgical capacity to support even more and more. And we're hearing over 1,000 injured have crossed the border to neighboring Chad. And the situation is really the same in neighboring countries, where we're really also active alongside the Red Cross and Red Crescents from the countries where they operate.
Thank you so much for giving us a bit of an insight in the work being done by the ICRC in Sudan, a good over 2 months into its conflict between two battling generals. Well, in other news, over 2 million children in Mali are out of school, unable to count on a stable education because of insecurity, poverty, and a lack of quality places to learn close to where they live. But options are improving in the capital, Bamako, as Caroline Lamberley tells us.
It's not your average school bus. Each morning, it picks up around 200 children to take them to school on an island in the Malian capital, Bamako. All the children are from nearby riverbank neighborhoods and islands, and before, many of them were out of school.
What I learn here has served me well. Not attending school is a danger for society, but when you get the chance to study, you can take care of your parents.
The school was built in 2017, and thanks to the riverboat school bus, it makes it easier for parents to send their children to school. In June last year, it was granted public school status, but it's still understaffed and under-equipped.
I'm in charge of 2 classes. We don't have enough teachers. We also don't have enough desks, because sometimes we organize activities so that children can do workshops, and each have a workspace of their own.
According to UNICEF, over 2 million children in Mali are out of school. This is because of insecurity, household poverty, child labor, child marriage, and a lack of quality schools close to children's homes.
Thanks very much for staying with us. That's it for Eye on Africa. Do join us again if you can. Till then, take care.